Good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Mon Valley Pittsburgh section of the National Council of Negro Women. My name is Patricia Bluette, and I am the section's corresponding secretary. Also joining us will be Alice Paler Days. Alice is a member of our section's political committee. We thank all of you who have participated in our previous programs and hope that you will join us again today with your questions by calling 412 853 8206. Our guest today is Miss Dawn Golden, who is the Assistant Superintendent of the Penn Hills School District. The program today satisfies one of the National Council of Negro Women's national mandates to educate African American women and their families. Today's program will also support the National Council of Negro Women's Good Health Wins, the initiative, and the CDC Bridge to Success to Access program. Before we begin the show, we would like to introduce our guest by reading her bio. Miss Dawn Golden's bio. Dawn L. Golden has been in the field of education for 23 years. Ms. Golden earned a Master's of Science degree in education as a school counselor and was hired almost immediately by the Duquesne City School District. While at the Duquesne City, Dawn also earned a certificate as a K 12 administrator. Dawn held the role of assistant principal at Duquesne City School District, Wilkinsburg Borough, and the Woodland Hills School District. While at Woodland Hills, her current while at Woodland Hills, Miss Golden was promoted to building principal and ultimately into her current role as director of pupil personnel services. Dawn was once again inspired to return to the classroom. She enrolled in an accelerated program at Point Park University to earn a superintendent's letter of eligibility to ultimately become a school superintendent. Dawn is a proud parent of four daughters: Jasmine, 19, Jayla, 19, Dalen, 15, and Jaya, 11. Miss Golden said that she has instilled in her daughters the importance of hard work and the need to do your best. As a leader, the goals and expectation that Miss Dawn has for her own children are the same goals and expectation that she has for all the students that she serves. Welcome, Miss Golden, and thank you for being part of our program today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bluette, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity that the National Council of Negro Women has afforded me today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Miss Golden, I heard that you were part of a program called Teach Plus program, and it involves several school districts. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Who was involved? What were the plans? What are the goals? And what do they plan to do now?
Sure. So Penn Hills was one of 6 school districts that participated as in the first cohort for the Teach Plus initiative. And essentially what the initiative focused on was the recruitment of teachers of color. As we know, in education, there are, our children don't get to see a lot of teachers or even administrators for that matter that look like them. We also recognize that the pool of teachers is declining overall, regardless of race. So this initiative really focused on the recruitment of teachers of color. And so Penn Hills, in our project, each district had the opportunity to develop a plan to fit their particular circumstances within their district. And so within Penn Hills, our focus was not only on recruiting teachers, but also retaining the teachers of color that we have currently. So it's an awesome initiative. We were in the first cohort, and they are, having a second cohort go on currently. And it's just really important work because our students need to see teachers and administrators of color.
Oh, thank you. Okay, great. I heard some great things about it, and I'm hoping that it will continue, and we'll see what the results are.
Yes.
Now, why did you decide to become a school administrator?
Well, I decided to become an administrator. I was working at Duquesne City School District. That was my first, I like to say my first real job, in education. I was a school counselor. And within that particular school district, I saw the disparities, the things that the students did not have,
Mm,
lack of resources, whether it was books or the opportunity to have an array of classes to choose from, just the lack of resources. And so I decided to go back into administration because I felt like I could impact children and impact change on a higher level. As a school district counselor, it was like I had my group of kids that I love dearly, but that was my sole purpose, my sole responsibility. But I felt like if I went back to school and I became an administrator, that I could impact policy, that I could impact, procedures. And like I said, be more of a voice for students and the needs of
mm.
students.
And that's where I met you at in Duquesne when you came to our school district.
Yes.
Now, what are some of the primary responsibilities of being an assistant superintendent?
So the responsibilities vary from district to district, but I can say, and a lot of times it's around curriculum. Some people have responsibilities related to human resources, operations, but my responsibilities as an assistant superintendent at Penn Hills are primarily on focus on special education and pupil personnel services, as well as registration, homebound instruction, homeschooling for students with disabilities. I like to tell people that my role is all things student centered.
Right. And I wanted to explain to our audience, I did introduce Miss Alice, but she's having some technical difficulties. So when she's able to get that all straightened out, we'll have Miss Alice join us. Okay, let me see. What are some of the most important challenges faced by school administrators?
So I think the major challenges for school administrators these days are just whenever I was a building principal, we saw challenges related to students' behaviors. However, since COVID, we also recognize that, the impact of mental health has also, it's shown a light on what our students really go through, the challenges and the barriers. So I think the major challenges, in addition to resources, making sure that the teachers and have the resources to adequately teach the students. But there's also that focus on the social emotional learning and the mental health of our students, and just making sure that they are well, so that learning takes place.
Right. And do you have the opportunity to interact with parents regarding behavior related problems?
So I can honestly say I did that more as a building level administrator, but in my role as the assistant superintendent, it's minimal. I do engage with parents whenever they don't have the satisfaction or feel like they've been adequately serviced at the building level, whenever their needs aren't met. And so then they call on me to kind of help them and assist them to get the answers, to their questions. And so again, I love the interactions with the families. I think that was one of the things that drew me to education. So anytime I get the opportunity to engage with students and parents, I certainly take advantage of it, regardless of the circumstances.
Right. And we all have those special memories. So, can you tell me about a memorable achievement as a school administrator?
That's a hard one. I think that, as an administrator, I've had a lot of them. I think as a middle school principal, just engaging with students, having an atmosphere or an environment where students wanted to come to school, to me was an accomplishment,
Mm,
because it wasn't always like that. Whenever I worked at Woodland Hills, it was, oh my gosh, that school was terrible. We don't want our kids to go to to the junior high school. But to really see kids who loved coming to school, having teachers that, engaged with students and genuinely cared about kids and their learning, and to me was a huge a huge accomplishment, professionally. And then too, just being able to grow in my career and in my experiences as a leader, I think is also a huge accomplishment for myself.
Oh, great. What motivates you to succeed as a school administrator?
I think just wanting the best for all students, wanting to make sure that they have what they need to be successful, making sure that they have equitable experiences, making, we know that, the field of education is not level, right? And so just being that voice and saying, this is what our kids need, this is how I can help to support them, I think is most important for me and the reason why I do what I do. I tell people all the time that, this is not a job for me, but this is my passion and my purpose. This is what I am supposed to be doing in this moment in time.
Great, great. Do you have any ideas on improving the current school system, not only yours, but those that you're aware of?
So I would say that my ideas of improving education are just, said briefly just about funding and the equity in education. And I think that's where it starts, is the funding. Ensuring that those school districts, that every school district and every child has what they need, that levels the playing field. And I know that, I don't want to get into politics, but, Governor Shapiro, had an increase in the basic ed funding formula for Pennsylvania, which brought more funding into the more urban school districts. And so I think initiatives like that help our students and help our teachers too, right? Because we get that additional funding that can also help with resources, whether it's mental health, whether it's academic, whatever the students need, it helps to do that. And so I think that, that's one of the biggest barriers to education at this point. I also think that, again, mental health, recognizing and understanding that mental health is real. Whenever I go into buildings and I see 5-year-olds who are struggling with that self-regulation, who come into our schools with a mirage of issues due to trauma that they've had at that age of 5, it's real. And so people have to understand that our kids come in with these barriers. And so creating that environment where children feel safe, that we create environments where students' needs are met, so that the focus can be on learning. I think that those are some of the biggest barriers that we see in education today.
Right. We had a recent program that was just started in the city of Duquesne in the 2 supporting school districts that are close by, and it was called The Village. And basically what it did was just get community people to come in and just say hello to the students as they're coming in. And it was interesting, when you see them when they get off the bus or they get out the car and they've already been scolded and everything, and they're coming in there and those little faces, are so down. So that's really important to try to boost their self-esteem and
Yes.
get them where they can actually be in a learning, time when they want to come in and learn and not think about what just happened to them in life.
Yes.
So
Yes.
thank
And
you for that.
I think it's important to, again, going back to, the governor's budget, is having that, that the ability for those lunches, making sure, that every student has access to food, because we know food insecurity is real. And so, just making sure to kind of remove some of those barriers that our students, to your point, Ms. Pat, come in with us. You don't know if a student has had dinner the night before. So you don't know the value of just having that breakfast and what that does for a child, just to get them ready to learn.
Right. Now, in your school district, do they provide lunches throughout the summer for the children also? Because, as you said, there may be that food insecurity within their households.
Yes. So we have in the district what's called safe spaces, and the Fold, which is the old YMCA in the district, is hosting that program for us. It's a program that is funded through the county. And so through that program, our students do receive, meals and things of that nature. We don't actually have the building open, like when you say that, I think about whenever COVID was happening in the building, we were able to, reach out and have those satellite places where students could get lunches and breakfasts. It's not to that degree anymore, but we do make sure that students have access to food during the school day. For students that stay after school for certain activities, they have access to, lunches. Like bag lunches. We have the 8099 Foundation that provides a food pantry for our athletes. So we do try to break down that barrier.
Great. Now, I've known you for a while, but I want you to share with our audience, what is your background and experience that helps qualify you as a school administrator?
Okay. So I tell people all the time, my career actually started in social services, and I worked in a homeless shelter for teens. That was my first, I'll call it, real job. And so whenever I was in school, I always wanted to go into the field of law. Why? Because you think about money as a young person. You think about, I'm going to make a lot of money. But whenever I was in school and I started working at the Downtown Outreach Center and Shelter. It was Family Links at that time. It's now Wellstel. I realized that is I was destined to work with young people. And so I worked in the field of social services, but I also recognized as a young person in my 20s that I didn't want to be on call on the weekends and have night shifts and things like that, which spawned me to go back to school to get my degree in school counseling. And to your point in my introduction, to ultimately go back to get my certification as a principal, and then go back to school to get my letter of eligibility. So I've been in education as a counselor, and then as an assistant principal, a director of pupil personnel services, and now an assistant superintendent.
Okay. And I guess you're going to be moving on pretty soon from that position.
Yes,
which would be great.
That is my prayer. Yes.
Okay. What major challenges and problems have you encountered as a school administrator?
So I would say the biggest hurdles that I've encountered are just the lack of support. As a Black woman in leadership, the support is not there like it is for some of my other colleagues. And so just really, having to lean on my other, women of color to kind of help me to make it through, I think is the biggest barrier. That the support is not there like it should be.
Okay. Now, you were an assistant principal at Duquesne, Wilkinsburg, and Woodland Hills. Can you share some of the experiences with us?
So I tell people that, I absolutely loved my years at Duquesne. I love my years at every school. I loved the relationships that I developed with the students, with the parents, with the community. I think those are so important. And to that point, like having authentic relationships, not just having relationships, because kids and families know that you care. So I can say that, whenever I worked at Duquesne as a counselor, encouraging and helping students to be that first generation of a student that went to college was, it was so impactful for me. At Wilkinsburg, working under the principal that I worked with, Ella Rawlings, as the first African-American principal at Wilkinsburg, making that adequate yearly progress with I was the assistant principal there. And so I was primarily responsible for the middle school, the oversight of the middle school. And so, we were instrumental in helping the district make that adequate yearly progress. So that was like impactful. Going to Woodland Hills, I was there for 13 years. So just, being an assistant principal, developing those relationships, moving into my own building, working with some amazing teachers and staff people, even my colleagues, whenever I moved into central office, it just, whenever people are there for the right reasons, to me is where I find that I shine. I'm there, like I said before, for a purpose. And whenever I have people that are like-minded with me, and I can get them to kind of get on board with my vision, I find that the sky is the limit.
Great, great. How do you evaluate student success and achievement?
So I think whenever you look at student success, you have to look at it on an individual basis, right? So you can't say that this student's goal should be the same as this student's goal. So what I like to do is like to look at each student individually and look at where they were and where they've gone. And so to me, seeing the progress, no matter how big or how small it is what is success for each child. I tell people all the time, whenever I was a middle school principal, when my kids would go to high school, they would always apologize to me for the way they acted. As a middle school student, they would apologize, "Miss Golden, I'm so sorry." And to me, that speaks to success, right? Because
Right.
they've learned, they've grown, they've matured. And so they see things through a different lens. And at the end of the day, that's all we want. We want them to grow. We want them to learn. And we want each child to reach their full potential, understanding that that's different for every child.
Okay. And that shows a great quality that you have. They would come back and apologize
Yeah.
because they knew that they gave you a hard time.
Yes.
Okay. Do you ever get the opportunity to work with the school boards on setting school district goals?
I do not, unfortunately. I do not. And I think that is something that needs to happen a little bit more. I can tell you it varies. In my experience, it's varied from district to district. I've worked with some school boards where, the administrators have come together as a group, as a central office leadership team, and identified those priorities for the board. And so I think that having that collaboration is important. And it also helps to make sure that funding is if those funding needs are met, those initiatives are identified, so you have adequate funding to fund those initiatives and those priorities. But at Penn Hills, I don't have the opportunity to engage in those conversations.
Okay. Now, I want you to think about yourself, and I want you to describe your personality and how you think it helps to work with children.
So I tell people I am who I am. I believe in, I care about the students and the families that I work with. And I think that has been one of the things that has made me successful. I think that, I come from a place where I listen, I learn. That's not just with my kids and my families, but that's with my staff too. I like to get to know people. I think it's important to have that personal aspect and that personal component as a leader. And because I find that, people are more willing to engage whenever they know that you are genuine about where you are. I also am that type of person that is on the ground, the boots on the ground. I'm not that person that barks orders. If there's a crisis, if there's something that I can help with or be a part of, that's who I am. I'm not going to send my staff out and say, "Okay, you go handle that. Let me know what happens when you come back." No, I'm on the phone. I'm there. Whenever we had the number of situations where there was a loss of life for our students at Duquesne. I'm sorry, not at Duquesne, at Woodland Hills. I was there. I was in the building. I worked with these kids. I was the students. I'm administrator. So being there to console students and to give them, what they needed at that point, to me was important. And so I think that that's what makes me the leader that I am, is that I'm authentic, that I'm honest, I have integrity, and that I care.
Oh, that's great. Now, if I were to go to any of your students and I was saying, you know, Miss Golden, what makes her a good school administrator? What are some of the answers I would get?
They would probably say she's cool, she's fair, um, I- she means what she says, she has expectations, right? And we know that no matter how kids are, they can say they don't want rules, but everyone wants rules. They want expectations, and
Right.
so I'm very intentional about making sure that those happen. You know, just last week, it was our seniors' last day, and they were a little crazy. And one of the security guards happened to be one of my former students, and he actually, to your point, Miss Pat, said to me, Miss Golden, this would have never happened whenever you were a principal. I said, you're absolutely correct. Yes. So my kids knew that I meant what I said, but they also knew that I came from a place of love and that I genuinely cared about them and wanted the best for them. So I think if you would encounter any of them, even 20 years later, they would say that.
Mhm. That's great. And that's a great comment that he would come to you and make that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, what part do you play in ensuring that education standards are set and clearly communicated?
So I think for me, in my role, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is making sure that the learning opportunities happen for our children. Um, you know, the Pennsylvania has the core standards that every school is supposed to follow, and that is, it was designed that, you know, whatever school district a child would go to, that the learning objectives were still the same. Now we know that there are still disparities, especially in urban school districts, right? But the standard was set. But I would say for me, as that district leader, is I love going into the buildings and going into the classrooms and seeing what is taking place. I'm not a believer of leading from my office. I feel like I have to be in the building, engaging with students and seeing what's taking place. That's the way that we can ensure that true instruction is happening and that learning is taking place. You know, we did a survey as part of our Teach Plus initiative in the Penn Hill School District, and there were quite a few. It was disheartening that we have educators that don't feel like our students can learn. And so for
Mhm.
me, it's okay, so we know what it is. So how do we remove that barrier? And it could just strictly be frustration on the part of the teacher, right? How do we remove the barriers so that our teachers have the resources so that students can learn? How do we make sure that the interventions are put into place so for our students who struggle to learn? Like, we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make sure that our kids are learning. And so for me, it's being out there, it's being visible. As Mr. Perrin said to me, I tell people this all the time whenever I was at Wilkinsburg, he used to say, you inspect what you expect. And I really didn't get it whenever I was younger in my career, right? I was like, okay. But as
Mhm.
I grow as a leader, I recognize and realize exactly what he meant by that. And that is, you have to make sure that you are out there, boots on the ground, making sure that what you're expecting people to do, that you are monitoring and that you are engaged in what's going on.
Right. You brought up the Teach Plus program again, and from what I've heard, like I didn't experience it personally, but the things I've heard about it, it seems to be very inspiring. What do you think is the problem? Why we are not getting more teachers of color in the school district, and what can we do today to encourage those young graduating seniors that this might be a field they may want to go into?
I think it's just, I think a part of it is based on their experiences in education. You know, some of them may not have good experiences. And so I think that's an impact for it. I think that they see the challenges, you know, our teachers are overworked. They deal with a lot, you know, it's not, you know, no longer is it just teaching. It's, you know, you have to make sure that they are socially and emotionally well in order to learn. That students come with so many more barriers that they have to overcome. So I think the field of teaching is far more challenging than it was whenever I started in education 24 years ago. And so I think that people kind of shy away from that because it's a lot. But I would say that for me, it's been one of the most rewarding experiences. Like I said, whenever I see my kids grow, whenever I see my kids mature, whenever I see them on Facebook getting awards, whenever I see them going into leadership themselves, those are the things, the small successes that we have to, hold on to. And again, just continue to build and grow. And we have to be that mentor, that person that our kids look up to. They need to see not just students of color, but all students need to see more teachers and educators of color.
Exactly. I know that recently that the some of the funding that was given to the school districts during the pandemic is being taken away. How are schools supposed to balance out now that that money is going away? What are some of the things they can do?
Honestly, it's really hard. I think that there has to be more emphasis on those grant opportunities, because to your point, that money has gone away. And so there were a lot of school district that used that for different staffing to put more staffing, positions in place. And so I think, I'm sorry, I got something in my eye. Providing those grant opportunities for districts to be able to apply for more funding is really the only way to go. And also with the hopes of the increases in the basic educational funding, hopefully that will help.
Right. Now, with the funding's gone and the staffing cut, what does a school district do to make sure that the coming school year is going to be successful? Since we're going to be working on a limited staff, limited funding, what are some of the things they can do?
I think they really just have to focus on the priorities. What are the priorities as it relates to the students' needs? Looking at the data to, again, drive those decisions. And I think that that's where school districts really have to look at prioritizing what the needs are for the students, and with the hopes, looking at the funding, prioritizing what the needs are of the students, and by doing that by looking at the data. Whether it's academic, whether it's behavioral, whether it's attendance, whatever that is, that should be driving the goals for and the priorities for the district.
Okay. Here's another good question for you. What part do you play in ensuring that educational standards are set and clearly communicated?
So I would say that as a leader in central office, I think that I play a part in that, again, by reiterating what the expectations are that the superintendent, has for the staff. So again, making sure that, when I go into those buildings, that, those priorities are put into place, those initiatives are put into place. So I would say that that's kind of what my responsibility is.
Okay, great. What course was the most challenging to you prepared for the school administration role?
So I thought, honestly, I didn't find any of them extremely challenging. And the reason why I didn't find them challenging was because a lot of them focused on growth as a leader, looking at what your values and your morals are and how they impact and mold you as a person, not only as a person, but as a leader. So I felt like these classes were just kind of helping me to really focus on me and who I want to be as a leader. So I wouldn't say that they were challenging. I felt like they were rewarding, if anything. Now, the ones that are giving me, I'm currently in school pursuing my doctorate degree in educational leadership. And I can say that the research methods classes are the ones that have been most challenging this time around. as I prepared to write for my dissertation. But I can honestly say that being in school and being an adult learner has been extremely rewarding. I love learning new things. I love, and value the importance of being kept up to date with, what is happening, what are the, most important things that are happening in education, because it impacts our children and what we need to do for them to make it a better learning environment for them every day.
No, that's great. Now, you're getting ready to go into the superintendents, getting your doctors for that. What training, what skills, what qualities do you need to become a superintendent?
So I would say looking at things from that holistic view, one of the things that I've learned is that, as I've grown, my lens has had to become broader, right? So as a counselor, my focus was on, ensuring that my students had what they needed to be successful in high school, and to also go on to whatever they chose to do post-secondary. As a principal, as an assistant principal, I was responsible for specific cohorts of, teachers. But however, I was responsible for a certain area. I was responsible for, a cafeteria duty. So that was an increase. And whenever I became a principal, I was responsible for a building. I was responsible for, 60, 70 teachers and staff and 600 students. As I moved to that district level, I was responsible for looking at policies and implementing things from that holistic perspective, from that district level. So what I'm saying is that as I've grown as a leader, the lens becomes broader. And so as that superintendent, you are looking at things from that broader lens and really making sure that there are systems and structures in place so that the needs of each and every student are met that come through your doors. So whether it's looking at the operations and making sure that, buses are ready to go and lunches are ready to go, or, again, students have the resources to learn, that, we're just making sure that they have the social, emotional, and mental health supports in place. It's just really looking at things from that holistic lens, for each student.
Okay. Now, recently, there were several schools, it was on the news, that had to close because of the temperature when it went up to 85 degrees or more. What's the solution to that? What can we do? What can school districts do so that they don't have to close their doors? I know they have the computers at home and they can work online, but what are some of the solutions that school districts can do to keep from having to close down their doors to the children?
Well, I think that, that's a great question, and it goes back to the funding, right? The older the buildings are, the more challenging it is to, kind of create those optimal learning environments for the students. So I don't disagree that sometimes whenever you don't have the resources to do that, that the only option is to do the online learning. But I think that we have to be more intentional about recognizing the impact that online learning has on students. Not every student thrives with it, and just be more intentional about making sure that the students' needs are being met. I can tell you at Penn Hills, we have 2 newer buildings, but the middle school is an older building. So just, we the district put air conditioners in a lot of the classrooms, and that's a hefty bill. But, we wanted to make sure that the students' needs were being met.
Okay, that's great. I have another question for you. What is the primary difference between school board goals and school district goals?
So it is my opinion that there shouldn't be a difference between school board goals and school district goals. The school district goals should be those that the school board supports. And so I think back to one of the earlier questions is that there should be conversations and there should be that collaboration between the central office leadership team and the school board to help to drive those goals for the school district. So I don't think that there should be a difference. They should be one and the same.
Okay. Well, how do we get everybody on the same page and so that everybody is working in that direction?
So I think that, one of the things that what I have found in my experiences is that, our parents don't come out enough. They don't come to board meetings. They don't ask questions. The only time that we might see them is when there's an issue, right? Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is that all parents need to be engaged in their children's learning, and the policies and the things that the board implement impact every child. And I feel like we have to have a voice as taxpayers, as people, in the community. We have to have a voice. And the way that we do that is that we become involved, in our kids' education at that building level, but also at that bigger level by having a voice and going to school board meetings and asking questions, and really holding the people that you vote into these positions accountable for making sure that our kids have what they need.
Now, that's a good answer. And we also have experienced the same situation in the city of Duquesne, the lack of parents coming out. What's the secret? What do we do? How do we motivate the parents to get involved?
I wish I had the answer to that question. I am, whenever I was at Woodland Hills, we tried, again, whether you offer things online or you offered incentives for people to come in, I think we have to recognize that our parents are also dealing with a lot, right? Our parents have different work schedules. So not a program during the school day works for every parent, just like an evening program doesn't work for every parent. So really reaching out to parents and seeing what they feel the needs are, how the school can best serve and support them, I think is the way to go with that. We really have to get parents involved and hear from them on how we can best help and serve them.
Okay. Now, what is your personal secret to a successful career as a superintendent?
Honestly, prayer, lots of prayer. Lots of prayer, leaning on, as I mentioned, my mentors that have helped me to get to this point in my career that I'm in, leaning on my mom, my spiritual, my pastor, family, I think is what helps me to get through. Leadership is not for everyone. And as I stated, a Black woman in leadership, it's lonely. It's lonely a lot for me. But I think that, I just feel like I have a purpose, and I'm in it until I feel like that purpose has been fulfilled.
Okay, thank you. There was something you said that I thought was very inspiring earlier before we came on air, and you were talking about where you live and how you're working in that school district. What can we do to get more people from their communities to get involved as far as being employees within their school district, and especially becoming teachers and administrators?
I think just being open and honest. One of the things that I learned whenever I was a principal is that, to acknowledge that you have challenges. And I think people respect that a little bit more than you just saying, "Oh, everything's great. It's great." So I think that, being honest, having those candid conversations, welcoming people into your space. A lot of times, even at Woodland Hills, I can tell you, when I worked there, I had family members that were like, "Oh my gosh, you work there?" And I'm like, it's not that bad. So really just allowing people to come into that space to see what you're dealing with, what you're working with, and creating those opportunities, because there are far more good things that happen in the Penn Hill School District, as well as the Woodland Hills School District, as well as any school district, public school public school district than what we get credit for. And so I think that, we have to do that by opening our doors, allowing people in, and again, tooting our own horns, because we know that the media, especially in urban education, doesn't show up unless it's something negative, right? So we have to create those platforms to tell our own story and be our own voice. And so I think that those things will help, would hopefully help to bring parents in, to bring more people into our workspace, allowing people to share their ideas, just being open and receptive to different people in the community.
Okay. Now, you've had a lot of experience in different school districts. What was the greatest success that you saw, or the thing that will remain with you for the rest of your life when you were in the school district? And what was the one that you thought, oh my God, how did this happen? What are we going to do so it never happens again?
I could say honestly that I've had success at each school district that I was at. Again, at Duquesne, it was, making sure that our kids graduated, watching those kids walk across that stage, watching students apply for and get accepted at colleges. Like I said, to be the first in their family to experience something like that. So I would say, in all of my experiences, I've found a success, working with as a director in pupil personnel services, working to put different systems in place to, impact our gifted, how we identify students of color, looking at ways that we could identify more students of color as gifted. Now, as changing, to where I'm at now, looking at how we could reduce the number of students that are identified as special education, and making sure that we are providing those necessary interventions and supports to students at that classroom level before we are going to testing and putting labels on students. So I would say that, in each of my experiences, I've had some successes that I hope to continue, to grow on. One of the biggest challenges that I had was whenever I went into Woodland Hills as the principal. And I was an assistant principal at the high school, but I moved to the middle school. And so whenever I moved to the middle school, I didn't have the opportunity to engage with the outgoing principal. So I just kind of went into this space and I was by myself, basically. And so I remember that I was doing a presentation for the parents who were, before the beginning of the school year presentation for parents. And I was speaking on the schedule. And I was sharing with them that the Spanish class was going to be part of a rotation, not knowing the history that this class was not only a rotation class, but for our 8th grade students, it was a class where they could take it to meet, as a Spanish 1 requirement. And so I just remember getting lambasted by parents. And, after I kind of stood there in shock and, after they calmed down, they recognized that I had been put in a situation that I didn't have all the information to communicate to them. And so from that, myself and my assistant principal and my counselors, we literally had to change over to maybe close to 300 student schedules in a matter of a couple of days, because we had to make the changes to the schedule because the changes that the district made were not communicated to the parents. So that is one experience that will forever stick out in my mind.
I can imagine that. Okay, now we have this genie that gave us this magic thing. You rub it and he comes out and you can have whatever you want in a school district. What would you have?
I would have the resources for every student to have whatever they needed to meet their needs. I would have, intervention programs. I would have, every book I would have every opportunity for students to engage in enrichment learning and create opportunities for students to experiment to do hands-on learning. Like, the sky honestly would be the limit for every single child that walked into my space, into my doors. That would be, if I had it, it would be more funding to do for every single child, to provide for every single child that came through my doors.
Well, I hope we find that little magic thing so that you can rub on it and get your wish, because that sounds fantastic.
Yes, me
You
too.
know, we're running, we're getting to the end of our program. See, I told you it goes really fast when you're
Yes,
on the air.
it did. It really did.
And I want to know, what would you like to share with us as your closing words to tell us something about what you're going to do, how you're going to succeed, and whatever you want to share with us at this time?
I would just say that it's very important, and I encourage and implore our students to our parents to really be involved with their children's education. One of the things that I found is that parents think, or people think that whenever kids, the older they get, the less they're needed, and nothing could be further from the truth. Our kids need to see us. They need to see us in their space. Kids today need encouragement. They need to know that people care. One of my favorite sayings is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And to me, whenever I heard that for the first time, it spoke volumes to me. And so I would just encourage our parents, our community members, our stakeholders to just really become involved in our students' lives, in our schools. Reach out to districts to see how you can become involved, because our kids need us. And those students that, provide the most challenging are oftentimes the most rewarding. So that's my last thing. And hopefully, I said something that, made somebody think, inspired somebody, or just really touched somebody in some way. But that's all I have.
Well, before we thank you, I want to thank you for that last comments that you made. That was really inspiring. It inspired me. Okay, and I'm sure it did many other people out there. And I want to thank you for choosing the profession you chose. Because this is what we need: more people like you become teachers and work with our children and motivate them, and also their parents. I love the fact
Yes.
that you include the parents,
Yes.
motivating. Okay.
Yes, we can't do it by ourselves. I tell people all the time that, as a parent, as a single parent, if I give my kids expectations whenever they go into the classroom or into that building every day. If you're having something, leave it on the bus. When you're walking to your bus stop, just leave it there, but again, our kids come in with so much these days. And I think that we just really need to take a step back and think about that before we engage with that child, before you, go at them yelling or angry or whatever that may be. You could be triggering something that happened to that child that morning or that has happened in their lifetime. So just really being mindful of our kids and our needs and what they go through on a day. Some of our kids, most of our kids on a daily basis, I think is really important. My oldest daughters, I share with people, one of their friends that they were in elementary school with, was a victim of gun violence. And so they carried that for so long. And I'm a parent that is hands-on. I'm a parent that, provides for them, but still that impacted them, and it still impacts them till this day. So I say to make sure that you are talking to your children, that we are talking to our children, and that we are making sure that they're well. And we're providing them with whatever they need so that they can be well.
And that is so true. Thank you so very much for those last comments and for the entire hour. I said it went by so quickly, and there's so many interesting things you talked about. But before we thank our guests for appearing on our program, we would like to say that the Good Health Women's Immunization Network Good Health Wins is our commitment to building an army of good health champions. The CDC Bridge to Access program is currently offering free COVID 19 vaccinations for the uninsured and the underinsured. You can call this number 412 979 9685 for more information. Once again, 412 979 9685. Ms. Dawn, we would like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to inform our audience about the quality of education in the Penn Hills School District and also what the other school districts should be having. We'd also like to thank our listening audience for tuning in, and we invite you all to join the National Council of Negro Women by calling 412 867 9641 for a membership brochure. We need your help to educate, advocate, and positively impact families and communities in the Rankin, Mon Valley, and the Pittsburgh area. Remember, our live program airs on the first Friday of every month at 6 o'clock p.m. Please remember to get vaccinated and have a wonderful, safe summer. Thank you.
Thank you.